Zuri wiped down the banister with slow, even strokes, humming low. The bangle caught the morning light and threw a small gold flare across the marble floor. Misuk came down the stairs behind her, robe cinched tight, coffee cup already empty. She stopped 2 steps up. Her eyes went straight to Zuri's wrist. "Where did you get that?" Not a question. Zuri kept wiping. "Get what?" Misuk came down the last 2 steps fast and grabbed Zuri's arm, turning it over. 2 maids near the hallway stopped moving. One of them looked at the floor. "This is real Chanel," Misuk said. "I know real when I see it." "Cleaners don't wear real." Zuri pulled her arm back, calm, like she was taking back something borrowed. "I clean floors. I don't steal jewelry." "Then explain it." "I don't owe you an explanation." Misuk's mouth opened, closed. She wasn't used to that answer. She turned to the maids. "Get the house manager." "Now." Beck walked in from the kitchen hallway, drying his hands on a towel, already reading the room. Misuk pointed at Zuri's wrist like it was evidence in a courtroom. "She's been stealing, or worse, working some angle on my nephew. Either way, I want it handled before he gets home." Beck didn't answer. He looked at Zuri, then at the bangle, then went back to drying his hands. Something about the set of her jaw when she said, "I don't owe you an explanation," sat sideways in his memory, a feeling with no name attached to it yet. Taemin came through the front door 20 minutes later, jacket over one arm, tie loosened. Misuk was on him before he got both feet inside. "Your cleaner is wearing a $5,000 bracelet. I want to know how a woman who scrubs toilets affords that." Taemin looked past his aunt at Zuri, standing by the stairs with her arms crossed, jaw set, not backing down an inch. "She didn't steal it," he said. "I bought it for her." Misuk laughed, short and sharp. "You bought her jewelry." "I bought her everything." He said it slow, looking at Zuri now, not his aunt. "Every piece, all real. I told her they were replicas so she'd wear them." The room went quiet enough to hear the grandfather clock in the hallway. Zuri's face didn't do what guilt does. It did something else. Her mouth parted, her eyes narrowed at him like he'd just switched languages mid-sentence. Misuk saw the look and read it as a woman caught. "You see that?" Misuk said. "That's a woman who just realized she's been found out." "That's not what that is," Taemin said, but he wasn't sure anymore, watching Zuri's face still working through what he'd just said. Misuk stepped closer to him, lowering her voice like it made her more believable. "Women like her don't fall for men like you by accident. She saw the house, she saw the cars, she played the long game, and you let her. Before tonight's story begins, we have one question. Are you watching alone, or is someone sitting right beside you? And where are you tuning in from tonight? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments. We can't wait to see how far this story travels. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for a story filled with unforgettable love, heartbreaking betrayal, and twists you won't see coming. Welcome to Afro-Korean Unique Tales. 4 months earlier, none of this existed yet. Zuri was just the new cleaner, and Taemin was just the man who owned the house she cleaned. He found her in the east wing, on her knees scrubbing a baseboard that didn't need scrubbing. He crouched down next to her, uninvited. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing at a section she'd already done twice. "I didn't miss anything," she kept working. "You're standing in my light." He moved. Didn't leave, just moved. That became the pattern. He'd find reasons to be in whatever room she was in. He'd ask her opinion on paint colors nobody was repainting. He brought her coffee she never asked for, and stood there while she drank it like he needed to watch her decide if it was good. 3 weeks in, he handed her a bag from a store she didn't recognize by name, but recognized by the way the bag itself was stitched. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a handbag, structured, black, the kind that didn't need a logo to announce itself. She held it like it might go off. "I can't take this. It's a gift. I clean your house. You don't buy your cleaner $500 bags. It's $40, he said. "Knockoff market downtown." I got a good eye. She studied his face for the lie and didn't find it, because he'd gotten good at hiding it fast. She kept the bag, used it, never once suspected the stitching cost more than her monthly rent. It kept happening. A necklace he called costume, shoes he called last season, marked down. Every time, he watched her wear something real, and let her believe it was cheap. because the one time he'd told her the truth about a bracelet, she'd tried to hand it right back to him at the door. "I don't need you buying me things," she'd said that day, holding it out. "I'm not that kind of woman." "I know what kind of woman you are," he said. "That's why I bought it." She didn't take it back that day. He'd told her it was fake, and she believed him, and she wore it every day after that without a second thought, right up until his aunt grabbed her wrist on the staircase and called her a thief in front of the whole staff. Bake kept every piece she ever tried to return. 3 bags, a watch, a pair of earrings she'd handed back to him personally, saying, "Give these back to him, I mean it." He never gave them back. He logged them in a drawer in his office, waiting for a day Taymeen kept promising was coming, the day he'd sit her down and tell her everything was real, and why he'd lied about it. That day never came before his aunt made it come in the worst possible way, in front of the staff on a Tuesday morning. Misuk wasn't finished. 2 days after the staircase, she left a stack of cash on the kitchen island, folded under a grocery list like it had been forgotten there. Zuri found it on her rounds, counted it without touching more than she had to, and brought it straight to Bake. This was just sitting out. Somebody's going to lose their job over this. Bake took it without a word and logged it. He knew where it came from. A week later, it was a diamond stud, left on the bathroom counter like it had slipped off during a shower. Zuri found it, wrapped it in a tissue, and left it in the drawer of the nearest end table with a note. "Found this on the counter. Didn't want it going down the drain." Misuk read the note twice, standing alone in the kitchen, and felt something she didn't want to feel, which she solved by deciding the woman was just smarter than she looked. That night she found Taymeen in his study and brought up his father for the first time in years. "You don't remember what happened to him because you were too young to understand it," she said. "He never once tested whether the people around him loved him or the name attached to him. By the time he found out which one it was, it had already cost us everything. Not just money. Everything." "She's not his situation," Taymeen said. "She's turned down everything I've offered her." "Then this costs her nothing to prove that." Misuk sat across from him, folding her hands like she was closing an argument, not opening one. "If you're right about her, she loses nothing. If I'm right, you lose everything by refusing to check. Which one are you afraid of?" He didn't answer that night, but 3 days later he told the staff there'd been a bad quarter. He told himself it was a formality. Something to quiet his aunt's voice so it would stop living in his head during dinners. He didn't let himself think too hard about what it would actually feel like from Zuri's side, because if he had, he wouldn't have agreed to it at all. The collapse started on a Thursday. By Friday, the second car was gone from the garage, and half the household staff had been let go with 2 weeks severance, and no explanation beyond budget. Beck stayed. Somebody had to run what was left, and Misuk made sure of it. She needed eyes inside the house that reported to her. Zuri watched the driveway empty out, and didn't ask questions the way Misuk expected her to. She went to the kitchen instead. "You don't have to cook for yourself," she told Taymeen that first night, already pulling pans from the cabinet. "I know how to make more than payroll checks disappear." "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't." She was already cutting onions. Within a week she'd cut the grocery bill in half, cancelled the standing flour order nobody needed, and started doing her own laundry instead of sending it out. She didn't announce any of it. Bake noticed and told nobody, because it wasn't his place, but he watched her fold Taymeen's shirts like a woman who'd folded 100 loads of laundry in a life before this one. 3 weeks into the crisis, she came to Taymeen in his study holding an envelope. "It's not much. 4,000. I've been saving it for something else, but you need it more right now." He looked at the envelope like it might be a trick, then at her face, which wasn't performing anything. "I can't take your money." "You didn't ask me to save it," she said. "I'm offering." He didn't take it that night. But he thought about it for 3 days straight, and thinking about it was the first crack in whatever his aunt had been building in his head. He started to wonder, quietly, whether the test had already answered itself. Misuk noticed the envelope conversation because she'd told the last remaining housekeeper to alert her the moment Zuri went looking for Taymeen with anything in her hands. She'd been waiting for a moment like this since she planted the money, sitting in her room most afternoons with the door cracked, listening for footsteps in the hallway. She found an old card of Taymeen's. one he'd signed for a birthday years back, and copied the handwriting close enough. She wrote a short note. "For everything you've done, buy yourself something. T." She tucked it into an envelope with $3,000 and left it under Zuri's folded uniform in the laundry room, where she knew Zuri would find it alone. Zuri found it that afternoon. She read the note twice. It didn't sound like him, too formal, too clipped, but the money was real, and the handwriting looked close enough that she second-guessed herself. She carried it straight to his study. "Did you leave this for me?" He turned the envelope over, read the note, felt his stomach drop before he understood why. "I didn't write this. Somebody did. I know somebody did. It wasn't me." The housekeeper had already knocked on Misuk's door by then. She was in the hallway within a minute, stepping into the doorway of the study like she'd been rehearsing her entrance the whole walk over. "Maybe she wrote it herself," Misuk said. "Practiced your signature. Left it somewhere she knew she'd be the only one to find it, then brings it to you looking like the honest one. It's clever. I'll give her that." "That doesn't make sense," Zuri said. "Why would I fake money from myself and then hand it to him?" "Because now he thinks you're honest. That's worth more than $3,000. Taemin looked between the two of them, the envelope still in his hand, and said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Zuri watched his face not defend her, and felt that silence land harder than the accusation had. He cancelled dinner with her that night, said he had calls to make. He didn't have calls to make. He sat in his study with the envelope on his desk for 2 hours, turning it over, hating that he couldn't explain it, and hating more that the not knowing was doing exactly what his aunt wanted it to do. Zuri felt the change immediately, the missed dinner, the short answers, the way he looked at her a second too long before looking away. She didn't ask him about it. She'd learned a long time ago that asking a man to explain his distance usually just gave him time to build a better lie. She heard it by accident, passing the study with a stack of towels. His voice, low, talking to his aunt. "I don't know who to trust anymore. Not with everything going on." She didn't hear the rest. She didn't need to. She set the towels down outside the door, quiet, and walked to her room, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time not moving, which wasn't fear, it was arithmetic, adding up an envelope, a missed dinner, and now this, and getting an answer she didn't like. She wrote the letter that night, 2 lines. "Thank you for the work. I'm resigning. Effective today." No explanation. She wasn't going to hand him the satisfaction of watching her defend herself to a man who'd already decided. In the morning she found Beck in his office before the house was awake. "These are mine," she said, setting a small pile on his desk. The bangle, a pair of earrings she'd worn every day for 2 months believing they cost $40. "I don't want them. I didn't know what they were, but I know now, and I don't want any part of it." Beck looked at the pile, then at her, and something in the phrase caught him sideways. "I don't want any part of it." He'd heard that same refusal, same tone, years back, from a stranger who'd sat with his employer through a bad fever and wouldn't take $1 for it. He didn't say anything yet. The thought hadn't finished forming. "He's not going to want you to go," Beck said instead. "He already decided that without me." She set her key on the desk next to the letter. "Don't tell him where I'm headed. I mean it." She was gone before the staff finished breakfast. Beck held the letter for 10 minutes before he could make himself walk it down the hall. If this story's already got you feeling something, hit like, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Afro-Korean Unique Tales, because it's about to get a lot heavier from here. Taemin read the letter standing in the hallway, still in yesterday's shirt. He read it 3 times like the words might rearrange themselves into something else. Beck stood a few feet away, hands folded, waiting to be asked. "Where is she?" "She told me not to say." "Beck, she told me not to say, and I gave her my word." Beck didn't move. "You want to find her, you're going to have to actually look. Not send someone. You." Taemin didn't call his organization. That was the part nobody in the house understood, not even Beck fully, that reaching for the people who usually found things for him meant word would travel, and word traveling anywhere near her name was the one thing he'd spent 2 years protecting her from. She didn't know what he really was underneath the businessman title, and if his people started asking questions about a woman who'd walked out on him, that protection ended the moment the first phone call got made. So he did it the slow way, alone. He sat with her personnel file, the thin one from when Bake had hired her, an address, a reference number, a name for next of kin. He drove to the address himself at 6 in the morning and found a woman 2 doors down who remembered Zuri, said she used to live there years back, gave him a name of a cousin who might know more. It took him 4 days, 4 days of driving to buildings that weren't the right one, of calling numbers that had been disconnected, of standing in a laundromat asking a stranger if she recognized a photo on his phone. On the 4th day, an old co-worker of Zuri's, a woman from a cleaning agency she'd worked for years back, finally talked, not because he paid her, but because he sat across from her and told her the truth. He'd hurt somebody good, and he needed to understand how badly. "You want to know about Zuri?" the woman said. "She raised her little sister alone after their mother passed, worked 3 jobs some years. I watched that girl turn down help so many times I stopped offering. She's not proud, she just doesn't trust what free costs." Costs how? Ask anybody who's ever needed something bad enough to owe somebody for it. She decided a long time ago she wasn't going to be that. He sat in his car afterward and didn't start the engine for a long time. Every gift she'd tried to hand back weighed different now. Every dollar she'd offered him during a fake crisis weighed different too. She hadn't been testing his money. She'd been protecting the only thing she'd ever fully owned, the fact that nobody could say they'd bought her. He'd lied to her about the jewelry to get her to keep it. He understood now that the lie hadn't been kindness. It had cost her the one choice that mattered to her. Back at the house, Misuk was going through old boxes in the storage room, looking for nothing in particular, killing time while her nephew tore the city apart for a woman she still half believed was playing him. She found a shoebox of photographs from years back and, tucked beneath them, a folded piece of paper in handwriting she didn't recognize at first. She sat down on the floor, unfolded it and read, "You don't know me and that's fine. I just didn't want you waking up alone tonight. Hope you feel better soon." She remembered the night, a bad flu, 3 years back, alone in a hospital room because Taemin had been in Busan and couldn't get back in time, and a young stranger, an aide, she'd assumed, someone's staff, who'd sat with her past midnight, held a cup of water to her mouth, and left before Misuk could even get her name. She remembered trying to press cash into the woman's hand at the door, and the woman pushing it back, saying, "I don't want any part of that. I just didn't want you alone." She'd kept the note for years without knowing why. She stared at the handwriting now like it might finally introduce itself. Baek found her still sitting on the floor 20 minutes later. "You've been quiet," he said. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to actually answer me." She held up the note. "Do you know whose handwriting this is?" Baek looked at it for a long moment. The phrase in the note, "I don't want any part of that," sat right next to the phrase Zuri had used 2 mornings ago, setting the bangle down on his desk. 2 moments, 3 years apart, same words, same refusal. It clicked into place all at once. "I was there that night," he said. "I drove her home after. I didn't put it together until 2 days ago, when she said something in my office that sounded exactly like this note. She never told me her name back then. By the time she started working here, I only had a feeling I couldn't explain. I didn't want to hand you a guess and watch you build something out of nothing." Misuk's hand went still around the paper. "Zuri sat with me. Zuri sat with you." The room felt smaller than it had a minute ago. Every accusation she'd made, every envelope she'd planted, every wrist she'd grabbed in front of the staff, all of it came back to her at once, stacked on top of a memory of a stranger who'd once asked for nothing and gotten nothing but silence in return for years. Misuk didn't leave the storage room for an hour. She sat with the note in her lap, running her thumb over handwriting she'd carried in a shoebox for years without once trying to trace it. She thought about the wrist she'd grabbed on the staircase. She thought about the envelope she'd forged, the handwriting she'd copied to make a good woman look like a thief. She'd spent months building a case against the one person who'd ever sat with her in a hospital room asking for nothing. Beck stood in the doorway, not pushing her to speak. "Does he know yet where she is?" "He's been driving since 6 this morning. He's close." Taemin found her on the 5th day, in a small apartment above a laundromat 2 towns over, the kind of place with a landing light that buzzed and flickered. He knocked twice. She opened the door already knowing who it'd be, because Beck had finally told her he'd broken his silence, Not about her location, just that Taemin wasn't going to stop. She didn't invite him in. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, same as the staircase, same backbone. "You didn't defend me," she said, "in that study. When your aunt said I forged that letter, you just stood there. I know. That's it? You know? I've had 5 days to think about what I should have said. I'm not going to waste your time pretending I said it already." He stayed on the landing, didn't step forward. "You want to know the truth, all of it, I'll tell you right now, standing right here. Not to get you back, because you deserve to hear it whether you come back or not." She didn't answer, but she didn't close the door either. "I lied to you about the jewelry because the one time I told you something was real, you tried to hand it back to me at the door. I didn't want to lose that fight, so I stopped having it. I told myself it was harmless. It wasn't harmless. It took away the one thing you actually wanted, which was the right to say no." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "And when my aunt said you forged that note, I didn't say anything, because some part of me still had a question in my head that I hadn't cleared out yet. That's on me, not you." "You let her make me small in a room full of people twice," Zuri said. "Once on the staircase, once in your study." "I know. I don't want gifts. I never wanted gifts. I wanted you to pick me over her voice in your head, and you didn't. I'm not here with gifts," he said. "I'm here empty-handed. That's the whole point. If you want me to earn anything back, it's not going to look like jewelry. It's going to look like me showing up, telling you the truth before you have to ask for it, and doing that every day whether you let me back in or not." She studied him for a long moment, arms still crossed, and didn't move from the doorway. "That's not an answer," she said. "That's a start." "Then let me start. Mi-suk came 2 days later, alone, no driver, having taken a bus 2 towns over because she didn't trust herself behind a wheel with what she needed to say occupying all the room in her head. Zuri opened the door and didn't slam it, which Mi-suk took as more than she'd earned. "I'm not here to ask you to come back," Mi-suk said. "That's not mine to ask. I'm here because I spent months deciding who you were before I ever let you tell me, and I was wrong, and I don't say that easily. You called me a thief in front of people I worked with. I know what I called you." Mi-suk's voice didn't waver, but her hands did, folding and unfolding in front of her. "I raised that boy from the time he was young enough that he still called me for everything. I was scared of losing the last piece of family I had left, and I turned that fear into cruelty, and I aimed it at you because you were the easiest target in the room. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth, and you deserve the truth same as you deserved better than what I gave you." Zuri didn't answer right away. "You left money in the laundry room, forged his handwriting." "I did." Mi-suk didn't look away from that. "I've already arranged tuition support for your sister's program. The rest of it, no strings, nothing owed, not to buy anything back. Because I finally understand you'd hand it back to my face if I tried." Zuri almost smiled at that, just barely, just at the corner of her mouth. "I would. I know." Mi-suk stepped back off the landing. "I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I'm asking you to let me keep showing up until you believe I mean it." 3 weeks later, Zuri walked back through the front door of that house on her own 2 feet, no one waiting to sweep her over the threshold, no gifts laid out to greet her. Taemin was in the kitchen, badly attempting dinner, flour on his sleeve. Baek stood near the doorway pretending to sort mail, watching the whole thing with a look he didn't bother hiding. Zuri set her bag down by the door, the same bag she'd walked out with, nothing new, nothing added. "I'm not back because you found me," she said. "I'm back because I decided to give this one more real chance." "Those aren't the same thing." "I know the difference," Taemin said. "I'm not going to forget it either." She crossed the kitchen, picked up the spoon from where he'd abandoned it, and started fixing what he'd already ruined, same as she'd done months before during a crisis that turned out to be a lie. Except this time there was no lie left standing between them. Just the two of them, in a kitchen, starting over from a place with nothing hidden in it. The last thing Baek saw before he stepped out of the room was Taemin reaching for her hand across the counter, and Zuri letting him take it. If this story hit you the way it hit us, don't scroll past without hitting like, dropping a comment, and subscribing to Afro-Korean Unique Tales. There's a lot more where this came from, and you don't want to miss the next one.